Jake Harper stood outside the sleek glass doors of Bright Tech Solutions, clutching his freshly printed resume and a notebook filled with nervous scribbles. The sun reflected off the building's mirrored windows, making it hard to see inside. He took a deep breath, straightened his tie, and stepped through the entrance. "Here we go," he whispered to himself. Bright Tech Solutions was a beacon of opportunity in his small town. Landing a job here straight out of high school was a dream come true. His parents had beamed with pride when he received the offer letter, and his friends couldn't stop talking about how lucky he was. But now, standing in the bustling lobby, reality set in. This wasn't a school project or a summer job. This was a real world. A receptionist greeted him with a polite smile. "You must be Jake Harper. Welcome to Bright Tech. Mr. Donovan is expecting you." Jake nodded, his palms sweaty as he followed her through the maze of cubicles. The air buzzed with the hum of computers and quiet conversations. Employees moved quickly, their eyes glued to screens, barely acknowledging his presence. At the end of a long corridor, they reached an office door with a nameplate, "Eric Donovan, Manager." The receptionist knocked softly before stepping aside. "Come in," a voice called from inside. Jake entered to find Eric Donovan sitting behind a massive desk, reviewing a stack of papers. Donovan looked up, his piercing blue eyes locking onto Jake's. "Ah, the new recruit," Donovan said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Jake Harper, right?" "Yes, sir," Jake replied, standing a little straighter. Donovan rose from his chair and extended a hand. "Welcome to Bright Tech. We value hard work and dedication here. I expect nothing less than your best." Jake shook his hand, the grip firm and slightly intimidating. "I'll give it everything I've got, sir." Donovan's smile widened. "Good. Let's get you started." The first day was a whirlwind of introductions, training sessions, and task assignments. Jake met his colleagues, who seemed friendly but distant. Everyone was focused on their work, heads down, avoiding unnecessary conversation. Jake's initial excitement began to wane as he noticed the tense atmosphere. People moved quickly, avoiding eye contact with Donovan whenever he passed by. There was an underlying current of unease that Jake couldn't quite put his finger on. By lunchtime, he was exhausted but eager to make a good impression. He sat alone in the break room, reviewing his notes, when a colleague named Mark joined him. "First day?" Mark asked, offering a friendly smile. "Yeah," Jake replied. "It's a lot to take in." Mark chuckled. "You'll get used to it. Just keep your head down and do your work. That's the best advice I can give you." Jake frowned. "Is it always this tense?" Mark hesitated before nodding. "Donovan runs a tight ship. He expects perfection. Don't take it personally if he comes down hard on you." Jake nodded, though a knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. He returned to his desk, determined to stay focused and prove himself. Later that afternoon, Jake overheard a commotion coming from Donovan's office. Curious, he glanced toward the door, which was slightly ajar. "This is unacceptable." Donovan's voice boomed. "Do you want to lose your job?" A muffled reply followed, but Donovan cut it off. "Excuses won't save you. Get it done or you're out." Jake's heart pounded. He had never heard someone speak to an employee like that before. As the conversation ended, he saw the employee leave Donovan's office, head down, shoulders slumped in defeat. Jake returned to his work, his mind racing. The charismatic, welcoming manager he had met earlier was nowhere to be seen. Instead, he glimpsed the darker side of Eric Donovan, a man who wielded power through intimidation. As the day ended, Jake packed his things, feeling a mix of pride and unease. He had survived his first day, but something didn't feel right. Standing outside the building, he glanced back at the Bright Tech logo shining in the evening light. His dream job wasn't what he had imagined. What have I gotten myself into? He wondered. Jake Harper arrived at Bright Tech Solutions the next morning with renewed determination. The text message from the night before lingered in his mind, but he brushed it off as a prank. He wasn't going to let anything or anyone distract him from succeeding. He found his desk and settled in, reviewing the task list Donovan had given him. The work was straightforward but demanding, and Jake was eager to prove himself. As he typed away, he noticed Donovan walking toward him. The man's expression was unreadable, his footsteps deliberate. Jake straightened in his chair. "Jake," Donovan said, stopping by his desk. "How's it going?" "Good, sir," Jake replied, hoping his voice sounded confident. Donovan nodded. "I need you to finish the report on client analytics by noon. It's crucial for our presentation this afternoon." Jake blinked. "The client analytics report? I thought Mark was working on that." Donovan's eyes narrowed. "Mark is busy. I need you to handle it." Jake nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. I'll get it done." As Donovan walked away, Jake sighed, feeling the pressure mount. He had no idea how to complete the report in just a few hours, but he wasn't about to admit that to Donovan. By noon, Jake had managed to piece together the report. It wasn't perfect, but it was complete. He printed it out and walked nervously to Donovan's office. "Here's the report you asked for," Jake said, placing the document on Donovan's desk. Donovan barely glanced at it before flipping through the pages. His expression darkened. "This is sloppy," he said, tossing the report back at Jake. "Did you even double-check your work?" Jake's heart sank. I thought it covered everything you asked for." "Thinking isn't enough," Donovan snapped. "I need results. If you can't handle this, maybe you're not cut out for Bright Tech." The word stung. Jake clenched his fists, fighting back the urge to defend himself. He had worked hard on the report, but arguing would only make things worse. "I'll fix it," Jake said quietly. "You'd better," Donovan replied. "And next time, don't make me look bad in front of the clients." Jake left the office, his mind racing with frustration and self-doubt. Was he really not good enough? He had always been a top student, but this job was making him question everything. During lunch, Jake sat alone in the break room, picking at his sandwich. Mark joined him again, noticing his downcast expression. "Rough day?" Mark asked. Jake nodded. "Donovan didn't like my report. He said it was sloppy." Mark sighed. "Yeah, he does that. It's his way of keeping people on edge. But why? Doesn't he want us to succeed?" Mark shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe he just enjoys having control. Either way, it's best to keep your head down and not draw too much attention." Jake frowned. "That's not how I imagined things would be." Mark gave him a sympathetic look. "It never is." The following days were grueling. Donovan piled more tasks onto Jake, demanding long hours and quick results. The more Jake tried to meet Donovan's expectations, the more the manager found reasons to criticize him. One morning, as Jake was preparing a presentation, he overheard Donovan speaking to another employee. "You need to step up," Donovan said, his voice sharp. "We can't afford to carry dead weight." The employee tried to explain, but Donovan cut him off. "Excuses won't get the job done. Either perform or find another place to work." Jake's stomach churned. It was the same pattern: intimidation, control, and fear. He realized Donovan wasn't just hard on him. This was how he treated everyone. At the end of a particularly exhausting week, Jake returned to his desk to find an email from Donovan. The subject line read, "Warning." Jake's pulse quickened as he opened the message. "Your performance has been unsatisfactory. If you don't improve immediately, we will need to reconsider your position at Bright Tech." Jake stared at the screen, his hands trembling. He had been doing his best, but it was never enough for Donovan. Feeling defeated, Jake logged off and grabbed his things. As he walked to his car, the weight of the job pressed heavily on his shoulders. "I can't keep this up," he thought. "Something has to change." The anonymous message lingered in Jake's mind long after he got home. "You're not alone. Others have been through this too. Don't give up." It should have been reassuring, but it only made him more anxious. Who was watching him? And why raced as he stared at the note on his desk. "Meet me at lunch." We need to talk. The handwriting was neat but unfamiliar. He glanced around the office, wondering who had left it. His thoughts immediately went to Rachel. She had been the only person to openly challenge Donovan. Was she reaching out? The next morning, Jake dragged himself out of bed, dreading another day at Bright Tech. The weight of Donovan's warning email sat heavily on his chest. He knew he couldn't afford to lose this job. His family was counting on him to contribute financially. But the constant humiliation was beginning to wear him down as the lunch hour approached. Jake's anticipation grew. He had no idea what to expect, but the idea of finding an ally in this toxic workplace gave him a glimmer of hope. As he arrived at the office, Jake noticed something unusual. His colleagues were quieter than usual, their eyes darting around nervously. It was as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. When the clock struck noon, Jake grabbed his bag and made his way to the break room. He scanned the room, but it was empty except for one person sitting quietly at a table, Rachel. Mark caught up with Jake by the coffee machine. "Hey, you okay?" he asked. "Hey," Jake said, approaching cautiously. Jake forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." Rachel looked up, a hint of surprise in her eyes before she nodded. "Sit down." Mark nodded knowingly. "Donovan's been on everyone's case lately. You're not the only one feeling the pressure." Jake slid into the chair across from her. "Did you leave a note?" Before Jake could respond, Donovan stormed into the office, his face red with anger. "Harper, my office." Now she hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I did. I've seen how Donovan's been treating you. It's not right." Jake's heart sank. He followed Donovan, trying to steady his nerves. As soon as they were inside, Donovan slammed the door shut, sighed, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "It's been rough. I thought I could handle it, but every day it gets worse. This is unacceptable," Donovan snapped, tossing a file onto his desk. "You missed several key points in your report yesterday. Do you even read the guidelines I send you?" Rachel leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You're not the only one. Donovan's been like this for years. He preys on new employees, isolates them, and breaks them down. He's driven people to quit, and some have had full breakdowns." Jake clenched his fists. "I worked late to get that report done. I followed the instructions as best as I could." Frowned. "Why hasn't anyone reported him?" "As best as I could isn't good enough," Donovan sneered. "This isn't high school, Harper. We don't hand out participation trophies here. If you can't keep up, maybe you should reconsider your career choices." Rachel gave a bitter laugh. "Oh, people have reported him. To HR, to upper management. But they all turn a blind eye because Donovan gets results. As long as he makes the company money, they don't care how he treats us." The words hit Jake like a punch to the gut. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but he knew it would only make things worse. Instead, he took a deep breath and said, "I'll fix it." Jake shook his head. "That's unacceptable." "You'd better," Donovan said coldly. "And if I see another mistake like this, you're out." Rachel nodded. "It is. That's why I left a note. I want to help you fight back." Jake's heart raced. "Fight back? How?" Rachel pulled out a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. "I've been documenting everything. Emails, meeting notes, testimonies from former employees. We need to gather more evidence and make a case that they can't ignore." Jake opened the folder, his eyes scanning the pages. It was a damning collection of evidence. Proof of Donovan's abusive behavior, manipulation, and unethical practices. "This is a lot," Jake said, feeling both overwhelmed and hopeful. Rachel nodded. "We need to keep documenting. Every insult, every unfair task, every unreasonable deadline. The more we have, the stronger our case will be." Jake sat back, processing everything. "And then what?" "We take it to HR again." Rachel shook her head. "No, HR won't do anything. We go public." Jake's eyes widened. "Public? Like online?" "Yes," Rachel said firmly. "If we share our experiences, others will come forward. We'll create a wave they can't ignore. Jake thought about it. The idea of going public was daunting, but it made sense. He had already started documenting his own experiences. If they could gather enough evidence, they could expose Donovan and force the company to take action. "I'm in," Jake said, determination hardening his voice. "Let's do it." Rachel smiled for the first time that day. "Good, but we have to be careful. Donovan can't know what we're doing. He'll try to shut us down." Jake nodded. "We'll be smart about it." That afternoon, Jake sat at his desk, staring blankly at his computer screen. His hands trembled as he typed, each keystroke feeling heavier than the last. His mind replayed Donovan's words over and over the next few weeks. Jake and Rachel worked quietly, gathering more evidence. Jake started paying closer attention to Donovan's behavior, documenting every interaction. He noticed how Donovan belittled his colleagues, took credit for their work, and used fear to maintain control. "You're not good enough. You'll never succeed." One day, Jake caught Mark in the break room and decided to test the waters. The self-doubt crept in, threatening to overwhelm him. But then, he remembered something his grandfather used to say. "Mark, can I ask you something?" Jake began. "Don't let anyone make you feel small. Stand your ground." Mark glanced around nervously before nodding. "Sure." Jake straightened in his chair. He couldn't let Donovan's words define him. He had to find a way to push back. "Have you ever thought about standing up to Donovan?" Mark's eyes widened in shock. "Are you crazy? He'd fire me in a heartbeat." "But what if we weren't alone?" Jake pressed. "What if more people stood up together?" Mark hesitated, his expression conflicted. "It's risky. I've got a family to support. I can't afford to lose my job." Jake nodded, understanding the fear. "I get it, but think about it. You're not alone in this." Mark gave a small nod before walking away, leaving Jake hopeful that he had planted a seed. Later that day, Jake overheard a heated conversation between Donovan and another employee named Rachel. She was one of the few people at Brightech who always seemed confident and composed that evening. Jake met Rachel at a coffee shop to review their progress. "I've had enough of this," Rachel said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You can't keep treating people this way. We're getting somewhere," Rachel said, tapping her laptop. "I've reached out to some former employees. A few are willing to share their stories anonymously." Donovan's reply was cold and dismissive. "You knew what you signed up for. If you can't handle the pressure, there's the door." Jake smiled. "That's great." Jake watched as Rachel stormed out of Donovan's office, her eyes red with frustration. She passed by Jake's desk, pausing for a moment. Rachel leaned forward. "We're building momentum, but we need a big move to get people's attention. Don't let him get to you," she whispered. "He's not worth it." Jake frowned. "Like what?" Before Jake could respond, she was gone. Rachel's eyes gleamed with determination. "A detailed letter. We share everything. Our experiences, the evidence, the testimonies. We post it online and make it impossible for the company to ignore." Jake's heart pounded. It was a bold move, but it felt right. "Let's do it," he said. "Let's break the chains." That evening, Jake sat at home, staring at his laptop. The urge to quit was stronger than ever, but he couldn't shake the feeling that if he walked away, Donovan would win. He opened a new document and began typing out everything he had experienced at Brightech. The long hours, the verbal abuse, the constant fear of failure cliffhanger. As Jake and Rachel prepared their letter, Jake received another anonymous message on his phone. As he wrote, he realized something. He wasn't alone. Others had endured the same treatment. And if they could survive it, so could he. "You're not alone. Keep going. We're with you." When he finished writing, Jake leaned back in his chair, feeling a small spark of hope. He wasn't sure what he would do with the document yet, but for the first time in weeks, he felt like he had taken control of his own story. Jake's mind raced as he stared at the note on his desk. "Meet me at lunch. We need to talk." The handwriting was neat but unfamiliar. He glanced around the office, wondering who had left it. His thoughts immediately went to Rachel. She had been the only person to openly challenge Donovan. Was she reaching out? As the lunch hour approached, Jake's anticipation grew. He had no idea what to expect, but the idea of finding an ally in this toxic workplace gave him a glimmer of hope. When the clock struck noon, Jake grabbed his bag and made his way to the break room. He scanned the room, but it was empty except for one person sitting quietly at a table, Rachel. "Hey," Jake said, approaching cautiously. Rachel looked up, a hint of surprise in her eyes before she nodded. "Sit down." Jake slid into the chair across from her. "Did you leave the notes?" She hesitated for a moment before nodding. "I did. I've seen how Donovan's been treating you. It's not right." Jake sighed, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "It's been rough. I thought I could handle it, but every day it gets worse." Rachel leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You're not the only one. Donovan's been like this for years. He preys on new employees, isolates them, and breaks them down. He's driven people to quit, and some have had full breakdowns." Jake frowned. Why hasn't anyone reported him? Rachel gave a bitter laugh. "Oh, people have reported him. To HR, to upper management. But they all turn a blind eye because Donovan gets results. As long as he makes the company money, they don't care how he treats us." Jake shook his head. "That's unacceptable." Rachel nodded. "It is. That's why I left a note. I want to help you fight back." Jake's heart raced. "Fight back? How?" Rachel pulled out a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. "I've been documenting everything. Emails, meeting notes, testimonies from former employees. We need to gather more evidence and make a case that they can't ignore." Jake opened the folder, his eyes scanning the pages. It was a damning collection of evidence. Proof of Donovan's abusive behavior, manipulation, and unethical practices. "This is a lot," Jake said, feeling both overwhelmed and hopeful. Rachel nodded. "We need to keep documenting. Every insult, every unfair task, every unreasonable deadline. The more we have, the stronger our case will be." Jake sat back, processing everything. "And then what?" "We take it to HR again." Rachel shook her head. "No, HR won't do anything. We go public." Jake's eyes widened. "Public? Like online?" "Yes," Rachel said firmly. "If we share our experiences, others will come forward. We'll create a wave they can't ignore." Jake thought about it. The idea of going public was daunting, but it made sense. He had already started documenting his own experiences. If they could gather enough evidence, they could expose Donovan and force the company to take action. "I'm in," Jake said, determination hardening his voice. "Let's do it." Rachel smiled for the first time that day. "Good. But we have to be careful. Donovan can't know what we're doing. He'll try to shut us down." Jake nodded. "We'll be smart about it." Over the next few weeks, Jake and Rachel worked quietly, gathering more evidence. Jake started paying closer attention to Donovan's behavior, documenting every interaction. He noticed how Donovan belittled his colleagues, took credit for their work, and used fear to maintain control. One day, Jake caught Mark in the break room and decided to test the waters. "Mark, can I ask you something?" Jake began. Mark glanced around nervously before nodding. "Sure. Have you ever thought about standing up to Donovan?" Mark's eyes widened in shock. "Are you crazy? He'd fire me in a heartbeat. But what if we weren't alone?" Jake pressed. "What if more people stood up together?" Mark hesitated, his expression conflicted. "It's risky. I've got a family to support. I can't afford to lose my job." Jake nodded, understanding the fear. "I get it, but think about it. You're not alone in this." Mark gave a small nod before walking away, leaving Jake hopeful that he had planted a seed. That evening, Jake met Rachel at a coffee shop to review their progress. "We're getting somewhere," Rachel said, tapping her laptop. I've reached out to some former employees. A few are willing to share their stories anonymously. Jake smiled. That's great. Rachel leaned forward. We're building momentum, but we need a big move to get people's attention. Jake frowned. Like what? Rachel's eyes gleamed with determination. A detailed letter. We share everything. Our experiences, the evidence, the testimonies. We post it online and make it impossible for the company to ignore. Jake's heart pounded. It was a bold move, but it felt right. Let's do it, he said. Let's break the chains. Jake stared at his computer screen, the words on the letter he and Rachel had written glowing back at him. It was a comprehensive account of everything they had endured under Donovan's toxic leadership. An open letter detailing the abuse, backed by evidence and testimonies from former employees. It was ready to be posted, but Jake hesitated. Are you sure about this? He asked Rachel during their next meeting at the coffee shop. Once it's out there, there's no going back. Rachel gave him a reassuring nod. We've come too far to stop now. People need to know the truth. Jake took a deep breath. His finger hovered over the mouse, and with one final click, the letter went live on a popular workplace rights forum. It's done, Jake said, his heart pounding. Now we wait. The response was faster than they expected. Within hours, the post gained traction. Former employees of Bright Tech Solutions flooded the comments section with their own stories of harassment and intimidation under Donovan. He pushed me to the brink of a breakdown. I still have nightmares about that job. I was too scared to speak out, but not anymore. Jake and Rachel watched in awe as their post went viral. News outlets picked up the story, and Bright Tech Solutions found itself at the center of a growing scandal. That afternoon, Jake's phone buzzed with a message from Mark. I saw the post. Thank you for doing this. Jake smiled. They were making a difference. The next morning at work, the atmosphere was tense. Employees whispered in hushed tones, casting nervous glances toward Donovan's office. It was clear that everyone had seen the post. Donovan emerged from his office, his face like thunder. He marched straight to Jake's desk. Harper, he barked. My office. Now. Jake stood, his legs feeling like lead, but he kept his head high. As he followed Donovan, he caught Rachel's eye. She gave him a subtle nod of encouragement. Inside the office, Donovan slammed the door shut. What the hell do you think you're doing? Donovan demanded, his voice a low growl. Jake met his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. I'm standing up for myself. For all of us. Donovan's eyes narrowed. You've made a big mistake. You think an online post will change anything? You think you can take me down? Jake didn't flinch. It's not just me. It's everyone you've hurt. And we're not afraid of you anymore. For a moment, Donovan said nothing, his expression unreadable. Then he smirked. You're nothing but a kid who got lucky landing a job here. You'll be out on the street before you know it. Jake clenched his fists. Maybe, but at least I'll have my integrity. Can you say the same? Donovan leaned back in his chair, his smirk fading. Get out of my office. Jake turned and walked out, his heart pounding in his chest. He had done it. He had stood up to Donovan. As Jake returned to his desk, the office buzzed with tension. Mark approached him cautiously. Are you okay? Mark asked. Jake nodded. I am, for the first time in a while. That afternoon, Bright Tech's HR department sent out a company-wide email acknowledging the post and announcing an internal investigation into the allegations against Donovan. Rachel read the email aloud to Jake. It's happening. They're finally taking it seriously. Jake leaned back in his chair, a wave of relief washing over him. But he knew the fight wasn't over yet. That evening, as Jake walked to his car, he received another anonymous message. You did the right thing. Don't stop now. Jake smiled, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for everyone who had been silenced by fear. The news of Donovan's suspension spread through Bright Tech Solutions like wildfire. The once intimidating presence of their manager had vanished overnight, leaving behind an empty office and an even more tense atmosphere. Employees whispered in corners, exchanging rumors and speculations about what would happen next. Jake arrived at his desk, feeling the weight of the moment. For the first time in months, he didn't dread walking into work. The air felt different, lighter, but he knew the battle wasn't over yet. Rachel approached him with a smile. "It's happening, Jake. People are talking. We've started something." Jake nodded. "But we need to keep the pressure on. They can't just sweep this under the rug." Rachel agreed. "I've reached out to a journalist who covers workplace rights. She's interested in our story." Jake's eyes widened. "A journalist? That's big." Rachel grinned. "Yeah, she said she's been following the Post and wants to do a feature on Brightecha's culture." Jake leaned back in his chair, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. "Let's do it." Later that day, Jake and Rachel sat down for a video call with the journalist, Samantha Lee. Samantha was sharp, professional, and clearly passionate about exposing workplace injustices. "Jake, Rachel, thank you for speaking with me," Samantha began. "Your story has already made waves, but I want to dig deeper. Can you tell me more about the culture at Brightech?" Rachel took a deep breath. "It's toxic. Donovan created an environment of fear. He bullied employees, took credit for their work, and made us feel like we were never good enough." Jake added, "It wasn't just Donovan. The company enabled him. HR ignored complaints, and upper management turned a blind eye because he delivered results." Samantha nodded, taking notes. "This is exactly the kind of story people need to hear. It's not just about one bad manager. It's about a broken system." The interview lasted an hour, and by the end, Jake felt a sense of catharsis. He had shared his truth, and now it was out in the open. The next morning, Brightech was in the headlines. Inside Brightech Solutions, a culture of fear and silence, the headline read, accompanied by stories from former and current employees. The article painted a damning picture of the company's internal culture, with Donovan at the center of the storm. The reaction was immediate. Clients began pulling their contracts, and social media exploded with calls for accountability. In the office, employees began to open up. Mark approached Jake during a break, his expression grateful. "Thank you," Mark said, "for speaking up. I was too scared to do it myself." Jake smiled. "You're not alone. None of us are." Despite the growing support, Jake knew there were still challenges ahead. Brightech's CEO, Linda Morrison, sent out a company-wide memo addressing the investigation. "We take these allegations seriously and are committed to creating a safe and respectful workplace. Changes will be made." But Jake wasn't convinced. Words were easy. Actions mattered more. That afternoon, Linda Morrison called for an all-hands meeting. Jake and Rachel sat together as Morrison took the stage. "We've begun an internal investigation," Morrison announced. "Effective immediately, Eric Donovan has been terminated. We are committed to rebuilding trust and creating a culture that values every employee." The room erupted in murmurs. Donovan was gone. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. It was a victory, but he knew it wasn't the end. As the meeting ended, Morrison approached Jake and Rachel. "Thank you," Morrison said, her tone sincere. "Your courage brought this to light. We want you both to be part of the new Brightech." Jake exchanged a glance with Rachel. "We'll help," Jake said, "but only if real changes are made." "Agreed," Rachel added. "We're not here to cover things up. We're here to make things better." Morrison nodded. "That's exactly what we need." The days following Donovan's termination were a whirlwind of change at Brightech Solutions. Employees began speaking out more openly about their experiences, and the company's leadership took immediate steps to address the concerns raised by Jake and Rachel. Posters promoting workplace ethics and mental health support appeared in common areas, and the HR department scheduled mandatory sensitivity training for all staff. But for Jake, the real victory was seeing his colleagues walk into the office with their heads held high, no longer cowering under Donovan's oppressive shadow. One afternoon, Jake received an unexpected call from Linda Morrison, the CEO. "Jake, can you come to my office?" she asked. Jake felt a flicker of anxiety, but nodded. "Of course. I'll be right there." As he walked down the hall, he noticed how different the atmosphere felt. The tension that had once permeated the office was gone, replaced by cautious optimism. People smiled at Jake as he passed, nodding in appreciation. When he arrived at Morrison's office, Rachel was already there. "Come in," Morrison said, gesturing for Jake to take a seat. "I want to talk to both of you about the next steps." Jake and Rachel exchanged a glance before sitting down. "First, let me say that what you both did took immense courage," Morrison began. "You brought to light serious issues that we should have addressed long ago, and for that, we owe you a debt of gratitude." "Thank you," Jake said, his voice steady. "But we didn't do it for recognition. We did it because it was the right thing to do." Morrison smiled. "I understand that, which is why we'd like to offer you both new roles within the company. Jake, we want you to join our ethics committee. Your job will be to ensure that what happened under Donovan's leadership never happens again." Jake's eyes widened in surprise. "An ethics committee?" "Yes," Morrison confirmed. "It's something we should have implemented a long time ago. Your insights and experiences will be invaluable in shaping our new policies." Jake looked at Rachel, who nodded encouragingly. "I'd be honored," Jake said, "but only if we're allowed to make real changes." "That's exactly what we want," Morrison said. "We're committed to rebuilding trust and creating a workplace where everyone feels safe and valued." The following week, Jake officially began his new role on the ethics committee. His first task was to review the company's grievance process and make recommendations for improvements. He worked closely with Rachel and other members of the committee to ensure that employees had a safe and confidential way to report concerns. One afternoon, Jake received an anonymous letter on his desk. "Thank you for standing up for us. Because of you, I found my voice." Jake felt a lump form in his throat as he read the note. It was a reminder of why he had fought so hard to bring about change. Later that day, during a company-wide meeting, Morrison invited Jake to speak. Jake stood in front of the crowd, feeling a mixture of pride and responsibility. "When I first started at Brightech, I was excited to be part of something great," he began. "But it didn't take long for me to see the cracks beneath the surface. I experienced fear, intimidation, and doubt, and I know many of you did, too." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But today, we're starting something new. We're breaking the chains that held us back. We're creating a culture of respect, integrity, and accountability. And it starts with each of us standing up for what's right." The room erupted in applause. Jake scanned the crowd, seeing familiar faces filled with hope and determination. After the meeting, Rachel approached Jake with a grin. "You did good." Jake chuckled. "Thanks. But this is just the beginning." "Absolutely," Rachel agreed. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through what we did." That evening, as Jake walked to his car, he reflected on how far he had come. He had started as an anxious new employee, desperate to prove himself. Now, he was a leader in transforming the very culture that had tried to break him. As he drove home, his phone buzzed with another message. "You've made a difference. Keep going." Jake smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. The fight for justice was never easy, but it was always worth it. Months passed, and Brightech Solutions underwent a remarkable transformation. The Ethics Committee, led by Jake and Rachel, implemented sweeping changes that prioritized employee well-being and created a transparent system for reporting misconduct. The company was no longer the same oppressive place it once was. It had become a symbol of redemption, proving that even the most toxic cultures could be reformed with the right leadership. Jake Harper stood at the podium of the annual ethics conference, gazing out at the sea of faces before him. CEOs, HR professionals, and employees from companies across the country had gathered to hear his story, a story of standing up against a broken system and fighting for justice. Taking a deep breath, Jake began. When I started at Bright Tech Solutions, I was just an ordinary employee, excited about my first job. But it didn't take long for me to see that something was very wrong. I experienced fear, intimidation, and self-doubt. And for a while, I thought that was just how the real world worked. He paused, letting his words resonate with the audience. But I learned that no job is worth sacrificing your dignity. No paycheck is worth losing your self-respect. I learned that we all have a voice, and when we use it, when we speak up for what's right, we can create real change. The crowd erupted into applause. Jake glanced at Rachel, sitting in the front row, smiling proudly. They had come a long way from those dark days under Donovan's rule. After the speech, attendees approached Jake, sharing their own experiences with toxic workplaces. One woman, with tears in her eyes, said, "Because of you, I found the courage to speak out at my own company." "Thank you." Jake shook her hand, humbled by her words. "You're the reason we do this. Keep going. Keep fighting." As the conference ended, Jake and Rachel walked through the streets of the city, reflecting on their journey. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" Rachel asked. Jake chuckled. "Not in a million years. But I'm glad we did. We made a difference." Rachel nodded. "And we're not done yet. There's still more work to do." Jake agreed. "Absolutely. But at least now we know we can do it." Back at Bright Tech, Jake returned to his desk to find another anonymous note waiting for him. "Because of you, I can finally believe in a better future. Thank you for breaking the chains." Jake sat back, a warm sense of accomplishment washing over him. He had broken free from the chains of fear and intimidation, and in doing so, he had helped others find their own freedom. He picked up his pen and added a final note to his speech outline for the next conference. "No job is worth your dignity. No paycheck is worth your self-respect. Always stand up for what's right, even when it's hard, with a renewed sense of purpose." Jake stood, ready to continue the fight for workplace justice. As he walked out of the office, he knew one thing for certain. The chains were broken, and they would never be put back on.